Okay, I like to start just by gauging the room a little. So we're going to do a little call and response. I'm going to say some words, and then I'm going to see what first comes out of your head and out of your mouth, just to gauge the room. So if I say the words, everything is awesome. Great movie, okay. Do we know the next line after that? So it's everything is awesome. We're sung down here as well, brilliant. Everything is cool when you work as a team. I'm going to come back a little bit to teamwork as we go throughout this presentation. Two things about me, though, to start with, because there will be a Q&A towards the end if you have any questions. But I'll get the two obvious ones out the way. Because I'm British, because I'm from the UK, no, I don't know the Queen. And I've never met her, I'm afraid. And no, I don't live in a castle. Although I did live opposite a castle, so I'm kind of in there. But what I'd really like to talk to you about today is explore, create, and share. Three parts of a process we use at LEGO Education in our approach to teaching. One of the big issues we have, and if you're an educator sitting out there now, or you know an educator, one of the big issues we have is time. How much time do we have to actually engage children in something that isn't specifically for a test, to answer an examination, to get them to move on to a new level? And every 4 or 5 years, we have this iterative process whereby we go, yes, creativity is the new thing in the classroom, and we're all going to be creative, and we're all going to teach creatively, and we're going to teach projects. And then the next year, the government decide, we need a new test. We need a new exam. We need a new way to mark how these pupils are doing in their class. And the creativity gets forgotten, and we go back to focusing on the test. I'm here today to start by saying testing and creativity are not mutually exclusive. They can work together in the same classroom. Sometimes it requires teachers to be bold and to tell their administrators and to tell their local education representatives, even the ministries of education at the top, that they can do that they can be creative in the classroom and still teach to the test. We have a product launching this week, which is to do with elementary science. And how it fits in here is, of course, we have the NGSS, the new science curriculum. And of course, that focuses everybody, all those science teachers, back on, here are new curriculum standards to meet. Here's a new test we have to pass. There's a number of new ways our children can fail in the classroom, and here's a hell of a new lot of ways that I can fail as a teacher. And of course, that's going to take up so much space in your mind, we forget, naturally, about the more playful nature of classrooms, the playful nature of children. And if there's one big takeaway here, it's playfulness. So explore, create, and share. An approach we have to take students into science, into literacy, into math, make them engaged, make them excited, make them want to explore for themselves, and still be able to pass those tests at the end. So let's take the first one, explore. Think for a moment about a world in which no one explored. Where would we be if no one ever explored? There'd be large portions of the Earth we'd never have found. We wouldn't have gone to the bottom of the ocean. We wouldn't have gone to the moon. And if we still all believe in what George W. said, we wouldn't be going to Mars in 10 or 15 years' time. So thankfully, we have explored. All these people who've come before us, these amazing minds, these geniuses who have gone on to discover countries, discover our oceans, discover space, explore, find new things. But they probably weren't passing tests. They didn't have to prove to somebody sitting in a room with a pen, ticking or crossing their answers, whether they knew about the world. Did Columbus sit a test? Probably not. Did Thomas Edison ever have to sit and answer questions to get a tick against an NGSS standard? Probably not. And we have this thing in our minds, I think, that Creativity, exploration, finding new answers comes from serious educational situations, classrooms that are serious, learners that are serious. We have to be serious about this, and then we'll find an answer. And I'm going to tell you now, no, that's wrong. Because exploration speaks to people who are playful, who are divergent in their thinking, maybe a little bit on the edge. Steve Jobs, Mark Twain, people who were kicked out of their schools for being difficult, for being rebellious, because they didn't want to sit and listen. I would say that if they had the opportunity to explore in the way they wanted to explore in the classroom, they would have stuck school out. Not that they needed to, because they were great people doing great things on their own. But maybe it's time to keep these people engaged in schools, to take them right the way through their curriculum and their education. Exploring then means that we can explore on a child's terms. We can explore at their rate. How often do we go into a classroom as an educator and say, okay, today we're going to do some exploration, we're going to do some research. And then we tell the children exactly what we want it is for them to explore and exactly what they need to find at the end. Because if they don't find that little thing out, they can't pass the test. We need to flip that over, and we need to start saying to children, okay, what do you want to explore? Or, here's an idea, how are you going to explore it? So we need tools that can support that. We need a way to explore, for a child to explore on their own terms. So what about create? What if no one in the world ever created anything? What kind of world would we live in if no one invented, designed, drew, built? Well, we wouldn't have fire, we wouldn't have the wheel, we wouldn't have tools, we wouldn't have clothes, and this would be a very different gathering of people if none of those things existed. So we need to put things into the hands of children that will help them to create. And again, that thing comes back into your mind. Time. Do I have time for children to go through that process of trial and error, getting it wrong to get it right, build, rebuild, talk, communicate, collaborate, rebuild again? We have 45 minutes, and we have to get from A to B, and if we don't, I fail, they fail, and nobody takes us seriously anymore. So we need to find places in our curriculum, places in schools, in after schools, at home, in clubs, in all different environments where children have time to create. And yes, they need instant gratification. Everything's at their fingertips these days. If it doesn't work in 5 seconds, forget it, I'm not doing it. So yes, they need something that they can instantly have the pleasure and the knowledge that they have built and they've constructed, and something works. They have achievement, they have success. Now let's move on. We're going to do a very quick create now. My colleagues are coming down the center aisle. They're going to give you some bags. When you get them, if you could pass them along your rows. This is a 2-minute exercise that you can do in any classroom with any group of people. And out of this one very small create exercise, we can discuss a whole multitude of different outcomes. We can have successes in lots of different areas. So what you have is a small bag of Lego. If you'd just like to put your hand up now if you don't have a small bag of Lego, and we'll make sure my colleagues get you one. That's fantastic. Thomas Edison did not invent the light bulb the first time he sat down to invent the light bulb. He took 3,000 prototypes in 2 years before he created a working light bulb. And he didn't have 3,000 failures. He said, I've just worked out 3,000 ways not to build a light bulb. But now I have the one that will. Could you take the pieces out of the bag? I would like you, please, to build me a duck. I'd like you to build me a duck. When you have your duck, if you can hold it in the air for me so we can all see everyone's ducks. And if there's anybody sitting in this room who thinks, if I put Lego in a classroom, it will just distract kids, not a sound is being made right now. There's something here about, I think, should be said about pressure in the classroom and how we put pressure on kids to get things done when we need to get them done. So I'm going to refrain from doing a countdown, because that just adds pressure. And we do it all the time as teachers. We just put that pressure on. You have 3 minutes, you have 5 minutes, you have 9 minutes. You have 6 years to learn all the knowledge you need to pass all of these tests. Otherwise, you will flunk the rest of your life. No, that's fine. Okay, could you just have a quick look around at everyone else's ducks? Don't judge those people who haven't finished. It just means they're more creative than you, okay? No points for first here. Okay, so what we have, I imagine, although these are really bright lights so I can see the front row, but I'm imagining we have lots of different ways to build a duck. Put your hand up now. Put your hand up if your duck looks exactly the same as the person sitting next to you. You need to stop cheating, okay? Clearly. No, because we've got 6 bricks that can be combined in any number of ways. Thousands of ways, in fact, which means that it's very unlikely that 2 people in this room have the same duck. In 2 minutes, we have a valuable lesson about creativity. We just need a way to get it from here to here. To make something concrete and tangible, we need to get those ideas out of our head. Now, we could take this anywhere we wanted to. We could start talking about what was the thought process you went through to design your duck. Did you have a quick look at somebody else's? Which is fine, by the way. That's perfectly fine. The exams at the end of school are going to expect thousands, millions of children to come up with the same answer, so they might as well look at their partner, right? We could take this in an entirely different direction. I could ask all of the front row to come together. We won't because we don't have time. To look at all their ducks, choose one, and build that duck. Now we have batch production. Then we could take everyone's ducks out into CES, get votes for them, bring them back here, pick the market-decided best duck, all build that duck. Now we have mass production. In one simple, tiny exercise that took us 2 minutes to build, we've explored the nature of creativity, that even though you're not kids, you still have it. Creativity doesn't disappear at the age of 9, despite what most high schools think. You can still teach children creatively. And one way to do that is to allow them to be creative and to build in the classroom. Edison, 3,000 ways not to build a light bulb before he came up with the way to build it. Explore, create, share. What if we never shared anything? What if all this knowledge that we have, all this amazing intelligence, ideas, understanding of our world, because our understanding of our world is our own. No matter how much Donald Trump likes to think we will all agree with him, we won't. Because we have our own way of thinking. You might agree with some of it, that's fine, but not all of it, because we have our own ways to make things work. But if we never shared that, then we'd never get anywhere. So let's think about all the ways we do share. Chris Hadfield, Canadian, first Canadian to walk in space. I got his book for Christmas. Amazing story. First guy to tweet from space. He wrote songs in space. And he didn't just do them for him, he did them for the world. He shared them. He tweeted. He was on YouTube. MySpace, you remember MySpace? Wow, that makes me feel old. The fact that we've gone through a version of online social media and it's disappeared, all but disappeared. Apologies if there's anybody representing MySpace. I should have checked that first, shouldn't I? No? Good. Now we have Twitter, and we have YouTube, and we have Instagram, and we have Pintastic, or whatever it's called. I mean, hundreds of thousands of ways to share. So I'm going to ask you to do something for me now. If you have Twitter, if you have Instagram, if you have a social media, I'd like you to share what you've just done. I'd like you to share the duck you've just built. So this is the bit when you're allowed to take your mobile phones out, and you are allowed to look at them. I'd like you to take a picture of your duck. If you can tweet it or Instagram it, could you put hashtag CES 2016, of course? And we have a hashtag #FollowMyDuck. And if you have Twitter, just because I'd like my friends to think I'm really important, could you put my Twitter name, which is @SteveInDenmark? Because despite being from the UK, I decided to move somewhere colder and wetter and darker. So I am @Steve, S-T-E-V, in Denmark. And let's show the power of sharing our thoughts. Now let's think inside a classroom. What if we could share all this knowledge, all these things that our kids can do? And of course, it's a scary world out there for teachers and parents who didn't grow up in the digital age, who didn't grow up with Instagram and YouTube and Twitter and Snapchat. Do I want my kids in my class or in my family having the ability to connect to all these people around the world, people they don't know, people they've never met? It's a scary world out there. But in small steps, we can break down those barriers. And maybe it needs to start with school, because it needs to start with educating the children about what is safe and what is right. And it's also about teaching the parents about what is safe and what is right, and what it's okay for their children to do. I mean, how often do we share the work that children create with the teacher, with their class, sometimes with their parents? Think about all those millions of fantastically bright ideas that are going through classrooms every day that get a tick and a level and get put in a drawer. Just one idea can change the world. I bet you anything. Well, we're in the city of gambling. I'll take this bet. I bet you anything that there is one of those ideas that can change the world in a child's book on a piece of paper lying at the bottom of a school drawer or a school bag or under their bed, because when you ask them to tidy it, they just kicked it under there. They're out there, and sometimes we need to give children the voice and the way of sharing. Explore, create, share. We live in a fantastic world where we can allow children the time to explore the real world, because it's so important that they get to live in the real world and not in Disney's world, or not in the Lego universe maybe, but in the real world. Setting them problems that they can solve by being creative, by being collaborative, and communicating those ideas to the rest of the world. Now, I do realize that sharing social media does mean Justin Bieber. But maybe he's just one of Edison's 3,000 whales not to be a pop star before we find the one that really is a pop star. Explore, create, share. Just one idea can change the world. It does take time in the classroom. It does take effort in the classroom, and it does take the guts and the courage to be the teacher to go, I'm doing it. I'm not going to teach my kids algebra today. I'm not going to teach my kids how we got to the moon today. I'm not going to teach my kids what a possessive pronoun is. I'm going to give them the opportunity to explore what they want to explore. I'm going to say, we're going to make really interesting, cool sentence structures today and let them take it from there. I'm going to say, I want to know how we get to different places. How do we travel? How do we break gravity? And I'm going to let them explore from there. And whatever the hell algebra is, we're going to do some numbers today, and let's see where that interest in numbers can take us. Last night, I was going to say last night I did this. That would be a complete lie. Last night I was in bed because I had vertigo. I got off the plane 2 nights ago. I woke up yesterday morning and I couldn't see. Lights were everywhere. I had to check the bottle of water that I drank just in case it had alcohol in it, and I hadn't noticed. But it didn't, luckily. phoned the doctor on a phone. He came, gave me a shot, I won't say where, gave me a shot. 6 hours later, I felt fine. Today, I feel back pretty much to normal, and I'm standing up here in front of you. Because we've allowed people in the past to explore, create, and share the idea of how we get someone who's sick back to not being sick again. Not every child in every classroom wants to be an astronaut. Science, technology, engineering skills go throughout life. There is a study that suggests that in any profession you're in, you will use science-based skills at some point in your professional life. But right now, sitting in a classroom that you teach, or that you know someone who teaches, or where your kids are, or where your friends' kids are, there is somebody in one of those classrooms who is gonna go to Mars. Because we've said they will. And as soon as human beings say we will do something, we go and do it. And we have to get those kids engaged in science and in learning in general, allowing them to explore, create, and share their ideas will get them interested, engaged, and learning for the rest of their lives. Thank you. Now, I believe I have about 7 minutes, so if there are any questions. We have a panel coming up straight after this, and one of my colleagues, Leisha, is going to be on the panel. She'll talk a little bit more about the actual Lego education product that we've launched here this week, which is actually directly talking into what I've just spoken about. So if you're still sitting there thinking, yeah, but how do we actually do it? What physical tool can I use? You'll get a good explanation of that, and we do have a booth here. Lego Education does have a booth here. You can go and see it in action as well. But I don't know if there's any general questions. Anyone, a teacher who's worried about the time in their classroom to actually do this?
This is Jai. So my question about is, so Lego, a lot of the traditional Lego has to do with building blocks and using hand, and whereas in 21st century, a lot of the skill has to do with coding. So what's Lego's plan in bridging the two?
With coding specifically? Yeah. Okay, so the actual product that we'll be showing here at CES brings that coding, brings that programming into the lessons. So this is Milo up here, and Milo is the mascot for our WeDo 2.0. WeDo is a science for elementary product. You build, and you can see the white brick on top. That's actually a Bluetooth hub, and it links directly Bluetooth to a digital device, which has software on it, where you can then code programming strings using a set of blocks. That's just one example for this one. We have a variety of different products that use coding. Mindstorm's EV3, which more people may be familiar with, because there's also a retail version of EV3. So this particular product very much tightly brings the coding in with the science context for those lessons. We have one down here.
If you have, okay. If you have colleagues or administrators that you're having difficulty getting it engaged in the engaged education side of things, is there any strategies or little packages you can leave beside with your colleagues, or ways to convince them to say, hey, if you give them this robot or this kit or even a hammer and some glue, what can you do to kind of get that going around you? Because there's plenty of evangelists, but getting a whole school or a whole district involved, any strategies would be interesting.
I think one of the interesting things, actually a lot of questions we get from teachers is how do I actually do this? What's the how here? And we can talk for days about what you're going to do in your class, but how do I do it? The marketing things that we have, and when you receive the sets, a lot of it is actually focused on getting teachers to be able to use it. So, the materials that we have here is very much, excuse me, is very much about how do I make it work timing-wise. The fact that it's curriculum-linked, and that's a big question for teachers. How do I actually, utilize it in my classroom? Is it just throwing bricks on a table, or is it just throwing hammer and nails on a table and getting them to do anything they want? No, you have to be a little bit more specific. So look for tools, look for resources that come with curriculum, so that teachers know what the outcome is. And then depending on what level of teacher you are, and I mean by level of teacher, I mean how progressive you feel, how confident you feel with using the resource or with the class you're using it with, then you can gradually push those boundaries. You can start in small steps. Each of the products that we do have getting started activities. They may be 5, 10, 20-minute activities, easily run, easily led by the teacher, step by step. How do I get the children from here to here? And for the children themselves, how do I get from here to here? Once they've got that confidence up, then they can begin to do something which is a lot bigger, a lot more grand, a lot more what I was just talking about, trying to talk to the heart to, of being really explorative. And it takes time. And I think it's finding administrators and finding schools who feel that they can invest that time. But yeah, finding the right product with the right level of teacher help is really useful. And hopefully straight out of the box, or even before you've opened the box, what you have there is a set of instructions which is easy enough to follow for any teacher to feel like they can make this a success. Is that kind of cool?
My name is Lee Bo, and I'm from Los Angeles. I work in the schools as an educator, as an artist entrepreneur. And I think you just demonstrated for us, because I've never made Legos before, what that logo is all about. Because the first thing that happened to me as a non-traditional learner with Legos, having not done it before, is total terror
Yes.
at not being able to assemble anything, even though I have vocational ed credentials and academic credentials. So I may be overtrained and under-supported, but it's that bridge to look for a downtime in this curriculum where you might use Marzano words, where they're cluster words, where you use a 3-syllable word with an ION, that like transformation, or another word that has to do with a manufacturing word, where you're getting to use algebra and the alchemy of playing with your hands and then understanding that that was math, that I just used a square with 4 little dots on it. I could not figure it out because I don't have depth perception, what the hell I'm doing, but I could actually make sense of what I can illustrate in my head and somehow get there by mistake. And it's that teachers are not in 45 minutes willing to make mistakes because they look like they're going to be punished.
Yes.
And so I'd also like you to make sure you get out to, I'm press here. There are other people who are educational press, and we often are under-supported to tell the story you just told, so that people like the gentleman right there or the man from England are able to dialogue with the administration about that vocational is not a dirty word. Hands-on learning is actually a way we make leaps into changing the world. And it's the way that Stuart Brand talked about all these different disciplines being able to dialogue through STEM and through STEAM.
Great, thank you very much indeed. And I think sometimes it's about finding the right names, the right people who are going to actually sell this to your administrator or to teachers or to schools. So we have a lot of outside research, guys like Mitch Resnick at MIT, who's a name big enough for us to go, hey, Mitch Resnick says tinkering and playfulness is what we should be doing in our classrooms. And if it's good enough for him, then guys, it's good enough to be doing in classes. So yeah, sometimes it's finding the right words and the right way. So thank you for that. And I think I see 000 on my clock. So I think I'm done.
Thank you.